Okay, Assemblymember Romero, thank you so much for doing this and speaking with us on this. First, we're going to talk about bail reform in a moment, but let's also begin with the housing audit that the mayor-elect, in her role as the chief city auditor, released earlier this week. Your takeaways. Obviously, this is a document, and we talk about audits, and people might get lost in that term, but there's a lot in here that could make an impact moving forward. What did you think of it?
Extremely comprehensive, Tom, and thanks for having me. I'm really excited to jump in and work with the mayor-elect and my state colleagues and my colleagues in the county to take everything in here, implement some of these really wonderful recommendations, and make sure that Albany is at the forefront of implementing some really exciting changes in our housing stock next year. At the forefront for me was the fact that young people are moving out of Albany. Um, as a young person myself, pretty sad. I'm also really looking at that lower end of the spectrum of the fact that homelessness is increasing. Over 1,000 people recorded in 2024, I believe. Not enough shelter beds or supportive housing for people like that. So for me, I'm looking at next year working with my colleagues in government to look at an increase in supportive housing, increase really in family size and accessible units to make sure that families can stay together. And that's going to be, frankly, a really big challenge as we look into the decreases in federal funding, those cuts that we're experiencing. So it's not going to be easy, but I'm up to the challenge, and it's one that's really necessary, especially for our vulnerable populations.
I asked this at the press conference to the mayor-elect about Albany being designated and clinching being a pro-housing community, when it comes to the governor's initiative. What role does that play here? Where does that fit into this conversation?
Well, what that literally means to those watching is that we get access to special funds from the state to specifically build more housing. Municipalities that are designated pro-housing communities means that they have specifically shown to the state that they are open to and excited about housing by passing specific local ordinances or doing very specific things that mean that they are open to and good for housing. So I am excited as your representative in the state to kind of facilitate some of those state grants and financial opportunities to bring in exciting housing opportunities. Something that I've been talking about a little bit that I'm interested in, and it's a little wonky, but bear with me, is bringing in the idea of more Mitchell-Lama housing. Like people don't know that we have this co-op style state-owned building right here in Albany. It's mostly a New York City thing, but and it's going to be hard. It's who knows even if it's feasible, but you have to start thinking outside the box if you want to bring more housing into the city. And I'm willing to do it. Mitchell-Lama is co-op style housing, state owned, but it's a great way for people to bridge that gap between renting and home ownership. You own your apartment through a co-op style building. I've visited the one in Albany. It's beautiful. It's clean. Everyone loves it. They stay there for a long time. And we get millions and millions of dollars every year in the budget for Mitchell-Lama buildings. Most of it goes to New York City. I'm ready to advocate to have more of that in Albany. So that's just one example of something that we can do that's a little outside the box. Let's think of more ideas like that. I want to work with our new mayor and our county executive to kind of do more things like that that can bring new housing to Albany. There's something else that was in this housing study that was a little concerning to me, which was the vacant units. That was really, really I mean, it was concerning, right? The fact that there was such a massive, massive number of vacant units, and whether it was underutilized units, red X, but I would love to see some state assistance in rehabbing or, a micro grant program to address those units for the owners that are interested. And I have a bill right now that would help local municipalities claw back those zombie properties in the way that there are owners that own those properties, but they're just in the wind.
Yeah, I think there was an interesting to meet the housing needs by 2030. You could put 40% of the vacant units back online. 40% of that would be to put the vacant units back online, which was the biggest chunk that they could possibly do at this point. The other 25% would be added to the current pipeline. So I bring that up with the concept of the Mitchell-Lama. Is that more of something in the current property, or do you have to create do you have to create new developments to be able to facilitate that?
I'm not sure. I'm interested in both. Like, I'm going to work with my state partners to figure out exactly how that's possible. But I'm telling you, in the state budget, I look at those lines and there are many, many, many millions of dollars, and it all goes to New York City. And it's a large part of, I'm a member of the Upstate Caucus, and it's a big priority of ours to make sure that there's parity between New York City investments and upstate investments. As we move into next year, we're going to see a lot of dollars coming in, maybe in free transit, maybe in free childcare. And a big priority of ours is making sure that upstate gets our due. And so, maybe along those same lines, making sure that we get investments in Mitchell-Lama housing, maybe just for capital investments in our existing building, maybe expanding some of the things that those tenants want. But in my mind, I would also love a new building.
Yeah, and then that obviously brings us to the zoning ordinance, which was another part of the presentation, another part of this audit as well. I mean, we could see some of the data now when it comes to this. How did you interpret it? And what does it look like now moving forward to you in terms of, obviously we saw, if people didn't see it, we'll give you a link to it, but the market rate and those applications have decreased. And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so for those watching, what we're talking about in the inclusionary zoning ordinance, what that means, just to break it down, what we're speaking about is that when a developer comes in and they want to build new housing, the inclusionary zoning ordinance means that the new development would have to put aside a certain number of units if the new development is over a certain number. If the new development is over a certain number of units, a certain chunk of that would have to be affordable. And there are two bills right now in the Albany Common Council that are trying to redesign our current inclusionary zoning ordinance, because people have said, leadership in Albany has said that it's unworkable. This audit also says that we should relook our inclusionary zoning ordinance. And Tom, I've spoken with you about this, that the Albany Common Council right now has a lot of power to decide exactly how they want to move forward. And given this study and given this data, I think that the best way to go is to look at one of those two ordinances. Personally, I like the Alfredo Ballerin ordinance, which is a piece of legislation that has been looked at with housing advocates, that has been looked at through different council members, and it's a compromise that not only allows for developers to pay into a potential pot of money that would be going into affordable housing within the within our municipality, the city of Albany, but it also allows for our inclusionary zoning ordinance to move forward and still stand. So I think that that type of middle ground compromise, okayed by housing advocates and our planning chair, Alfredo Ballerin, is one that could get us to where we need to be while taking into account this audit. But it's one that still needs to be vetted by constituents and go through the process, not only by the county planning board, but also hopefully by a very rigorous public comment period. But that being said, I do think that a compromise, as long as the housing advocates are on board, could be positive. And the housing advocates in Albany have okayed that Councilmember Ballerin ordinance.
It's interesting in this audit as well. Either version, the 2017 and then the changes in 2023, really what they looked at when they modeled really wasn't feasible in this market, I should say. They said in these current conditions, either version, this audit said really doesn't make sense. It doesn't grow the housing stock in the way that it was intended. I will also say there was another aspect of that talked about the 50% AMI and below for people, and they're trying to pay that this ordinance necessarily maybe not addressing as much, Where is that? Because that's sort of beyond that. Those and they said the extremes are also a big part of this of being able to find people that to find something affordable for people in those lower ranges of rent, if you will.
Well, Tom, I think that the what the audit said was that the original inclusionary zoning ordinance was more feasible than the current inclusionary zoning ordinance, and that the current introduction by Councilmember Ballerin would put us in a place that, if possible and if needed, that developers would be able to opt in to a possibility that is more feasible. So per what I'm trying to say is that the current Alfredo Ballerin ordinance puts us in a place that is not only in line with the suggestions of the mayor-elect's housing audit, but also puts us in a place that is acceptable by the housing advocates, and puts us in a place that does not put us 3 steps back, 2 steps forward, or you know what I'm saying? Doesn't put us
Yeah.
all the way back before our first inclusionary zoning ordinance many years ago, is what I'm trying to say.
And I think it's important to note here too that this isn't unique to Albany. We talked before that Boston has this, and it's a plot, and they have some similar conversations, but they are trying to look, and other municipalities apply it in similar ways that I think you're mentioning with this new amendment, right? I think that's more that's what you see other municipalities do instead of the I think what they were calling it is a one size fits all approach, right? That at this point it needs to be more curtailed, right, to the current issues and conditions, and that's what you're looking at here.
Totally, Tom.
Yeah.
And I think that this new ordinance would allow us to have flexibility, would allow us to create that housing fund for affordable housing within our municipality, but would also get us to a place that would keep the inclusionary zoning ordinance of long ago.
Anything else from the audit you want to discuss?
One last thing, Tom, on the audit is, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, was the vacancy rate of 3.7. If for those that know, 3.7 is that sweet spot of opting into ETPA. And so just obviously the data is a little old, but if we were to declare a housing emergency and we were to be trying to opt into ETPA, we would have given this data. And I think that this just kind of goes to show that when municipalities are trying to opt into ETPA, and those that are watching ETPA is the Emergency Tenant Protective Act, i.e. rent control, it's very important that we do outside audits, not inside audits, for purposes of rent control, because that outside audits almost always give us the more correct and true data, i.e. giving us this accurate 3.7%. As you remember, when Albany did its internal audit, we did not pass that percentage.